So here we go, part five. Um, so yeah, these are some of the things that have come to mind over the last few days, and yeah, let's talk a little bit about. I mean, the vision is obviously there, in relation to the full pure potentiality we have of. That kind of vibe that we often, well, some of us anyway, have experienced, in relation to the festival circuit. I got involved in the festival circuit because it was the closest I could get to being on the land, where there is a period like for 4 days to a week where we will walk around in our feet or sandals, in the grass on the land, and weather permitting, it's often, once everything is up, the infrastructure's in, and the art installation from stages to beautiful little gardens. Everybody has a place, and there's no cars running around, and everybody's walking around in a kind of almost like a time period like that once was before the noise pollution of cars. Coincidentally, the Aboriginals of or I should call them the originals, because I don't know, it's a preference actually for the original inhabitants of Australia. They were asked a question, or they asked a question to an environmentalist once. What do you think is the worst pollution on the planet? And they came up with all sorts of answers, and none of them were right. And eventually, they says noise pollution. Now, anybody that knows anything about the song lines and the originals where they can sing a song in the desert, which will take them to a watering hole, and some really beautiful. The song lines and the old ways, and the way that they tell stories, and oral tradition, and just this kind of thing, like the dream time. John Moriarty talks about it in his Dream Time, which is a book I'd highly recommend, from the Irish Celtic perspective. The dream time. When you think about it, I've heard it said like the Celts. The Celts had such access and connection to the dream time once upon a time that they were able to hold school, if you like, education classes in the dream time. Is this something that we've lost? Anybody that practices remembering their dreams or having intention while going to sleep, will often come up with some fantastic experiences and stuff. In relation to this, is it possible? Is it possible to, tap into something where you could learn an instrument while asleep? In some other dimension or something. These are things I'm interested in myself. But certainly, the noise pollution that is on the planet. According to the originals of Australia, they say it affects their dream time, and so all that digging and mining and pulling and shifting and driving and burning of fossil oil fuel, the fracking, all this and the movement of the billions of cars around the planet, the trucks, the boats, it creates a frequency of noise that certainly is something that we can close ourselves off to quite easily, but still exists. Now, when I was on the Glastonbury tour, which I'll be finishing that story, or having a part two of that story soon, there was a time where I felt like I could hear what the badgers were saying. The fox was talking to me. The birds, and people could say, "Oh, yeah, you're mad." Doc, who do you think you are, Dr. Doolittle or something like that? But everything is in communication. I believe plants. The science is now saying that plants are conscious. There's an interesting one for the vegans. Because as much as you like to say, killing animals is bad and stuff like that. Well, then, plants are conscious. Yeah, we're killing plants too. Okay, maybe not on the same level as the suffering that can take place on an animal, but it's just something to look at. So are trees conscious? Some people believe no. There's no, just the tree is just dead. It's there just to serve us, isn't it? And we can build cupboards and boats and weapons or whatever, with wood, and use wood to burn, to keep warm, and make things from forge or furnace, and it goes on and on and on and on. So really, it seems to me as though there's got to be a trade-off or a balance or a fine balance of the scales amongst all things. So certainly, instead of taking things from the earth that potentially can't be replaced, begets the idea that if we can grow things such as fossil fuels, and a guy called Paul Stamets, highly recommend you watch this video. I think it's 6 Ways to Save the Planet. Paul Stamets TED Talks about the mycelium mushroom. What an amazing character. This is what gives me hope and keeps me on my toes in relation to those that feel very just non-optimistic about the world, and worried about the time scale of how much and how far we are destroying the planet today, because I personally think we're in exactly the right place we are at this time, because there's nothing we can do about yesterday, but we can certainly change today and then therefore change the future. So however much time we have left, there's nothing we can do about it, in the sense that whatever, if there's that belief that you say everything is written, or whatever the case may be, whatever it is you believe in, or whatever it is you think, or how you think, certainly, some of the things that might not be true about climate change certainly might be part of the kick in the arse that we need in order to kind of make a move so that we don't end up in that place ever. So we can't rule anything out. If it's part of the conspiratory kind of idea that it's it doesn't exist and it's just about fear mongering and keeping people on their toes or keeping them under the thumb. I don't. I like to supersede this kind of thing. I mean, just in relation to the idea that I have in myself is that I don't think there's anything stopping us but ourselves. And be the change that you want to find in the world, or this kind of thing, which I think is really important. The Hopi Indians, the keepers of certain keys or texts, they have a fantastic connection to the land, and their tradition goes way back, further than any other peoples. The Hopi, Hopi, the Hopi, definitely worth looking at some of their warnings to humanity and so on. The Kogis would be the same, Koji. They have 2 movies, one from the 80s and one more recent called Aluna. Well worth watching these two movies for inspiration in relation to their memory of their times and people. The Hopi say, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And the Hopi, the Kogis have they call us little brother, and they say we've come to that time now where they are noticing the difference. And they have a warning for us. They have something they want to say to us. These guys have been living in the mountains of Colombia in high altitude since the invasions. They pulled back and have refused to interact with the new world. And have managed to keep their traditions and so on. And but they've opened themselves up to a couple of interviews over the years, and their messages are quite clear and poignant and completely relevant to this time. So okay, we don't want to take away from that reality, because we all know, if those that are awake, we know, there's everything is a fine balance, and we know the difference between right and wrong, and no matter what way you look at it, it is we want to leave a legacy behind us, for our children's children and so on, and there is a lot of fear mongering, but there is a lot of truth to some of the things that are slightly could be looked at or may be looked at like in 100 years time as barbaric. Certainly we all need to make moves towards this. You know, where at least try and make our a connection back to the land and the mother, and you know, because the reflection of the downside of that is often, you know, we forget where we come from, and you know, we continue in the same vein, you know, towards each other, in continuing to separate ourselves from that what is true. And so, you know, in the same vein, you know, I'm very optimistic, you know, about where we are at this time and stuff like that. But at the same time, you know, we need to stand up. We need to stand up and fight against tyranny and you know, this the kind of untruth, you know, and behavior, you know, from some of the people that are supposed to be there to serve us, you know, in the government, and you know, in those jobs of civil service and so on. You know, this is important, really, you know, because you know, it's true. There's a lot of corrupt people, you know, in this system, you know, and that is as much the problem as it is you know, what we might want to do sometimes in taking it down. You know, the infrastructure and parts of that infrastructure might actually be very useful and helpful if it was actually living up to what it is it's supposed to be upholding. You know, if it's democracy, then let it be true democracy. You know, if it's capitalism, let it be true capitalism. You know, there will be a bad side of capitalism and a bad side of anything, really, I suppose, in one sense. You know, so is it possible that we can take the best of everything? You know. In whether it be socialist, communist, or whatever the case may be, maybe not even have a name for it, but you know, in the name of love, perhaps, you know, and caring and sharing and so on, you know. So you know, I'm very 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 much like in this kind of vein of you know, we are in a state of emergency, you know, and it doesn't have to be a 999 emergency. It could be an emergency like a butterfly emerging from the cocoon, you know, to the caterpillar stage to the butterfly stage, you know. You know, this is perhaps what the human is going through right now, you know, and you know, we are potentially you know, in a sort of caterpillar stage, moving to the butterfly stage, where you know, we're going to fly one day, literally fly in the most beautiful sense of the word, you know. And this is what I dream for, you know, and hope for, yeah. And so, you know, these are the first few steps, I think, you know, because this weekend was a tough weekend for me, you know, hanging around good people where I just see the conversation was worthless, pointless, because we haven't taken those first steps in harnessing our you know, our energy in a way that you know, is respectful towards the mother and you know, this body, you know, this vehicle that we are carrying around with us, you know, and you know, how far are we away from true connection, you know, to the, you know, the cosmos, you know, the universe, and real energy, you know, that obviously I'm not feeling so good at the moment, you know. When I was pre Paddy's Day, it was like I was starting to my inner smile was coming back, you know. I was starting to feel something you know, light coming back into my being, and I was nowhere near you know, past the first stage up and I don't think I will be until the 88 days, and that's taken for granted that I will you know, achieve a steady impeccability from here on in, you know, in relation to the diet and no more relapses, you know, because it affected me deeply. It affected my sleep, it affected my energy, and I didn't listen to my intuition, and I think this is really important. So you know, as much as I'd like to think I'm strong enough to be able to operate within the eye of the storm, you know, I now know I've got to be really careful who I hang out with and where I spend my time, and until I'm strong enough to be able to completely shine, and in that kind of place of inspiration for you, my brothers and sisters. So I'll be back with part 6 in a moment.